Welcome to the new school. What we wanted to do was talk about the concept of authenticity and vulnerability in an industry that has typically been super buttoned up, super professional, and a little bit old school.
Welcome to episode number 11 of the New School Video Podcast. It's me, Candace, Head of Advisor Education at Vicom Partners. And in this episode, I'm flying solo and had the opportunity to speak to Matthew Ricks, the president of Haystack Financial Planning, which is an RIA firm based in New York. So what's super cool about Matthew, or as we call him, Matt, is that he's a CFP who previously worked at JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, and Ameriprise. He even has an MBA from New York University, but recently began the journey of going independent and launching his own RIA firm focused on the disabled and special needs community. Okay, so what's really cool about Matt is he's really showing up authentically online already, and he tells us a little bit about why he thought that was important, specifically in serving this very niche market. He's all things new school and has a really unique perspective on the future of the RIA industry, how we consume information, build trust, but more specifically, why he decided to venture off by himself in his own firm and serve this very specific niche. Of course, like all our guests, I think you're going to love him. Hi, everyone. I'm super excited because today we have Matthew or Matt Ricks of Haystack Financial Planning. You're based out of New York City. You're an XY Planning Network member, and you recently launched your own RIA. Welcome to the New School Podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Candace.
So, Matt, you're kind of different from some of our other guests, which is why I was excited to have you on, because you have actually quite an impressive background. You have an MBA from NYU. You worked at JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Ameriprise, but you decided to very recently decided to launch your own RIA focused on the niche of families who have special needs. Why'd you do that?
Yeah. So my background, big corporate finance, right? So I started my career asset management, working for JP, like you said, became an advisor at Wells Fargo, went to Ameriprise, made the switch really because I wanted to have more control over who I work with and how I work with them. The industry's changing. The old ways of, certainly, Bud Fox and Wall Street from the 80s, that's long gone. But even the ways of the early 2000s, people don't want just investment advice. People want full-scale advice on all their finances. So forming my own RIA allows me to do that. Also allows me to pick and choose who I want to work with, right? There's wrong with working with everyone. People can be generalists. I decided to go into working with the special needs or, disability field and that community, mainly because it's underserved. If you look at the statistics, 1 in 5 are diagnosed with a need or a disability. That's Americans. And then if you account for caretakers, it's 1 in 3. So there's roughly 330 million people in the US. So you're saying 100 million people within this community. So I certainly didn't hyper niche by any means. But, came about it through the normal course of business, decided and found enough interest from myself from the different layers, if you will, the different benefit programs, the different knowledge base that you require that from the, let's call it normal financial planning, right? Where I said, hey, look, this is interesting. There's a need. This could be a business as well as I could help people, which is why I got into this business.
But tell us a little bit about that. Like, what was there like a moment where you were like, I can't do this anymore? Like, I noticed on your website, you wanted to marry, you said, your love of financial planning and being of service. I think I'm not saying it exactly right, but like, when were you like, because I mean, you took a really big risk. Why I wanted to have you on is because of who you're focused on. I haven't seen that before. I thought that was really cool and really new school. But like, tell us a little bit about like that kind of like emotional experience, that thought pattern. Did you come home one day to your wife and say like, I just can't take it anymore? Like, what was it? What was that journey like for you?
Sure. So like most advisors getting into this space, you come in and you either are completely on your own or you partner up with an older advisor, a more experienced advisor. Doesn't necessarily have to be older, more experienced. I did that at Wells, didn't work out for a number of reasons. Tried that at Ameriprise, didn't work out for a number of reasons. Mainly for, they always promise a seat at the table, part of the decision process. Didn't work out for me. I was frustrated with that. I never saw myself as an entrepreneur growing up. I'm going to be very honest. It's not something where like I was always, hustling to make money, this or that. I worked for my dad growing up, and it was mostly because he knew that he could tell me what to do, whatever he needed me to do. And I would do it. I didn't have a choice. So it helped him out. And, I got some spending money in high school and college. Like I said, I started out working for JP Morgan, one of the biggest institutions out there. I didn't have that entrepreneurial spirit. The breaking point really for me was, okay, you work for these bigger financial firms and you work and you service the client. You are sourcing the client, right? You're bringing in and forming those relationships. And the old school way is you give a big cut of your revenue for the support. Technology has changed the game there. Especially last year proved that to me, where when COVID first hit, my family and we left New York to go to Florida to my parents to get more space, to get out away from kind of New York City. And my parents, house, we were there with family, but my clients acclimated wonderfully to the virtual experience. And to me, that said, hey, I don't really need an office then. Not a lot of them came to my office anyway. I came to them. All right, so what am I paying this percentage of my revenue for, right? If I don't really need this office space, okay. Or clients don't require me to have it, right? Obviously Zoom and virtual meetings and software and the different technology available now, especially working with younger families or people with young kids, they're not going to be able to meet at 6 o'clock after work. They're going to get home. So this new virtual world, I have young kids myself. It makes it simpler for everyone to coordinate. So that's kind of like two aha things was, hey, the virtual thing, it's not a fad. This is the way of the future. Even older clients, I have a client of mine where he worked in Midtown for 45 plus years, gave up his office, said, why didn't I work from home sooner? He goes, this is great. He goes, my clients don't matter. I go to the courthouse. That's where I see them. They don't come to my office. Why am I paying all this money? So like I said, between that and just frustration with kind of not having full control over my career, who I want to work with, the messaging, right? Working for a bigger firm, it's always kind of about the larger brand versus me. And I may not necessarily agree with the larger brand at all points. And they don't really allow, for reasons I understand, they don't really allow you to kind of get your messaging out specifically. And that was frustrating, especially trying to work with this community. It is such a tailored messaging you need. And, to show that, hey, I understand, those extra needs you have because of, your family members or loved ones. I can help you with that. I have that expertise.
I think it's so interesting. So I know I've asked this question to you like in a multitude of different ways, and you're like, because people need it, but like, why special needs? Like what I feel like there's kind of there must be some emotional pull there. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where I didn't realize it at first, but the more people asked me that question and the more I dug, the more there is, right? I had a number of friends growing up where, I'm 37, right? So growing up, a lot of kids weren't diagnosed with a need or a disability. And you go back and you look at it and you're like, yeah, he had a very big speech impediment. That's a need or a disability. Or, there was a kid, I played football in 6th grade. He was a grade younger. I forget exactly, what, but, he certainly, gave it at us all. Right. And I'm not trying to, do that whole, feel good porn type thing where, the feel good story, but just a kid who had physical issues and just wanted to be part of something. and had a great attitude about it. But, as a sixth grader, you don't think of that. But looking back on it, I'm like, hey, wow, I have experience with this stuff. I've lived through some of it. Close family friends, cousins, that they've dealt with it. And I've had that experience through them from it, and realizing and seeing the trials and tribulations they go through, and understanding kind of their pain points, and, talking to them and hearing their conversations like, oh, I wish I knew this, years ago, or I wish I had someone who could tell me this, kind of just cemented it, right? More after the fact, but that's the emotional side of it, is where, hey, I have more experience than I thought with that community, with that need, and yeah, that's the honest truth, So,
Yeah. So I know there's lots I want to talk to you about with that. But when you tell people, you and I talked about this this conversation, when you tell people, and you're in the XYPN growth marketing workshop, which I built with the XY team, which was super exciting to me that you're in it. So you know the lingo. But as you think about the change that you're trying to create and why you became an advisor, I already see, even though you have this corporate finance background, like the way you show up online is very authentic and very real. So I just wanted to read this. So you said, hi, I'm Matt, the president of Haystack Financial Planning, an RIA in New York. You talk about drumming to financial advising, to a focus on special needs. Not nirvana, but it's closer. You show up very friendly, very authentic, very natural already online. Why? Why did you do that?
Well, thank you. That's a great compliment coming from you. And yet the Extract growth platform and the workshop has been great to help me fine tune that. And part of one of the reasons I started my own firm was to be me, right? Like I said, I want to get my message out there. I want to share my story. And part of that is this community, the disabled and special needs community, they can spot a phony. They know it. They have enough on, they're dealing with the doctors, the insurance agents, the government programs, where they don't have time for it, right? And if you're not authentic, it's easily spotted. And it's a very close-knit community where you could easily get a reputation for good or for bad. And you're burned, or you're seen as, a good resource and a good help. So when I decided to start my own firm and focus, on disabled and special needs individuals, there was only one way to do it. And that was just to be me and say, hey, look, this is who I am. This is what I believe in. This is why I'm here. And it resonates or it doesn't. Like I said, it's 110 million people. It's not going to resonate with everyone. I don't need it to resonate with 110 million people, right? I just need it to resonate with the right people.
1,000 true fans. So when you tell people that you specialize in special needs, and especially as you're going through the workshop, are people like, oh, is that a thing? Is that viable? What has the response been?
A lot of other planners and advisors and people talking to trust and estates attorneys, right, or other professionals, certainly don't come across a lot of planners or advisors who outwardly market and focus their firm on that. So that's another reason why I did what I did, right? You Google it and you get firms out there that do focus and outwardly market towards that, but there's not enough. It's viable because, hey, look, this isn't a socioeconomic issue, right? There are plenty of people with means, with wealth, where a loved one has a disability or a need. They have, the normal, right, planning needs of everyone else. And if they're a parent with a child who has a need or a disability, more times than not, they have other children. Okay, so you have planning for that one child as well as other children, as well as your retirement and whatever else you want to accomplish in your life. It's not something where, I do incorporate pro bono work as part of my practice, and I believe in giving back and as part of that. But it's not like I'm out here, as a quasi public defender for finance, right? Where all I'm doing is doing all the pro bono work.
It's interesting that you say that. I think I've shared the story with people close to me, but I work in finance, and for a long time I kind of rejected it because even though I've spent my whole career in the RIA industry, when I was early on when I graduated university, I got jobs at UBS and some other companies, and I just couldn't take them. I was like, my soul is going to die. I cannot do it. And I went to go work at Nordstrom for a year, which was really fun until I couldn't pay my rent. And then I was like, I need to get a real job. And I discovered the RIA space of like aligning people's money with their values. And I was like, oh, this is something I can get behind. It's actually like really meaningful. But then I did struggle with sometimes, well, what are we actually doing here? Like, we're just helping the uber wealthy, like, get wealthier, you know? But then what I think I started to realize is, you know, I used to think that people who worked at nonprofits or those types of companies were like better people, like they were doing better work and having a bigger impact on the world. And I've